I'm Frank Stanisci, and welcome to CFL Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download the app, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now, joining me as usual is David Morassutti. David, how's it going, buddy?
Not too bad. We finally have another CFL event to talk about, so it's a good day, of course.
Yeah. All right. All right. I'm just going to put my microphone on mute. You got 40 minutes. Don't bore me.
I mean, if you're watching the CFL draft, you might that might be
Huh?
an
What?
impossible
What?
task.
Well, you want everything to go snappity, snappity, yippity, yippity. Um, the early going, I guess it's fair to say that the draft is moving along. That's a word I'd use. But they're having a lot of fun. The boys on TSN are doing a masterful job of describing everything that's going on, which is great. Um, I'm looking here for the draft, and I have lost the live draft picks
I got
to
him here
see
if you
where we're
need
at.
them.
Yeah, yeah. No, go ahead. Okay, then do me a favor. Um, well, here I can do it now. Okay, we have now had 7 picks.
7 picks, and we're an hour through.
Okay, Terrell Richards of Syracuse. This guy was the pick number one,
No
pretty
doubt.
much consensus, right?
Montreal, and the fact that it's Montreal getting it, like how it all came about.
Were you surprised about that trade?
I don't get what Edmonton's trying to do. Like, I understand that the O lineman that they got in the trade, O'Donnell, he's a really good offensive lineman, but he's not a guy that I'm expecting to count on right now. Not even in a unless he flames out in this next round of trying to make the NFL. I don't see the point. I don't know what Edmonton's seeing here because you basically have gone down. You went down to fourth, and all you got out of it was an offensive lineman out of it. Like, is that
Well,
enough?
maybe as does happen sometimes, you can afford to wait a little longer because the guy that you want to pick, you're pretty sure will still be there.
This is
So you
true.
get they got a pretty good asset, you know, for that draft pick. So they come out of it with two. Um, Now, when they sign them, it won't be as expensive to sign the two that they have as opposed to having two in the first round. So yeah, they I don't question Chris Jones, but he's more of a guy that brings players in. I've never really been a guy that thinks that his strong suit is not drafting. I don't think.
No, he that's not really his. He's a recruiter. Is he a player personnel guy? Is he the one that's going to go on scouting trips to scout players? No, because he's also the head coach. So right, he's a coach. His scouting is at practice, not
Well,
driving.
his scouting is phone calls.
Exactly. Well, and he has somebody else that's supposed to do that, right? The whoever
Yeah,
the
he makes a lot of phone calls and he gets a lot of he makes phone calls. He's pretty wired, as
yeah.
far as players are concerned. And then this is one of those times that I think that he will step back and let his people that are basically working on the draft, his experts and in Canadian football players, let them take care of it, which is a good idea in my opinion.
Yeah, I always covering the draft in my times, just not understanding how most CFL teams do it, just from the Argos perspective, Pinball Clemens doesn't do the draft. It's more so Vince Magri, who's the
Yeah.
assistant GM. He puts it all together, and then he'll talk it over with the head coach, and then they go through it all together. But yeah, this is not. not usually one where the GMs usually take the tops up because they're not exactly, you know, able to get all the information on these guys. They have somebody else who does this. The teams that generally do all, oh, actually, as we're doing this right now, very interesting pick by the Edmonton Elks. First time since when was the last time, Frank, a quarterback was picked in the first round of the CFL draft?
Oh my goodness, gotta be a while.
Well, trend just got broken. Trey
There were a
Ford.
lot in the third round. There were a lot picked in the third round. Trey Ford gets picked by him. So, um,
We
yeah.
know
Well,
that.
let's run down the players that were drafted. Um, the pick that BC made, Nathan Cherry,
Mhm.
was projected to be a third round pick. Um, he's out of Saskatchewan, defensive lineman, a fair sized guy, 6'3", 240 pounds. I wonder what scared BC into picking him that high.
You know what? In some of these cases, if you're high on a player, if that's the player you want, you just go and get it. You know, this was like when the Argos picked the Sean Brissett. Old, that really early. This is because maybe they could have picked him later in the draft. You just someone else may want him, and you're not going to take the chance on losing out. You can say, oh, trade back and try to get the player. I'm not a fan of doing that just because you you play your hand a little bit, right? Because a certain teams are gonna be like, so why are you trading back? Who do you want, right?
Yeah,
Or and in a lot of cases, the team that's trading up, that team's gonna say, oh, and who do you expect to take with that pick? I think this is just probably somebody BC had their eyes on and didn't want to lose out on. That's usually how those go. If they go a little bit out of turn in terms of the rankings.
well, I and then we get Enoch McConzo. Um, Montreal gave their pick to Edmonton for the first overall,
Mm-hmm.
and this is another guy that wasn't projected to go up that high. Another pick off the board.
It's so tough. I always say the hardest draft to mock is the CFL draft because the, partly of what I've talked to Marshall about this and we've talked about it. You try to take what the best player, but teams don't necessarily take the best player all the time. They take the best player for the needs that they need to fill. Teams take different approaches to this draft. It's not just I'm going to take the best Canadian players. Like, no, I can't take the best Canadian defensive back if I need a defensive lineman. Like, they look at the whole. Some teams have to look at the holes that need to be filled on the roster.
And number 5, Jalen Philpot, which pretty much consensus pick around that area, and a Calgary kid. So not surprising that Calgary picks him up. We talked and a lot of the availabilities that we did with all the teams. One thing they said that I heard and understand is that going local is a good idea. Players want to be
Yeah.
near home, that kind of thing. So they got this guy, and just so we're clear, he's a wide receiver, 6'1", 190 pounds, and this is a kid that can catch almost anything. So once again, Calgary and receivers on the way again.
Calgary's needed to add some Canadian talent to that position. Their receiving core got depleted quite a bit over the years. How many of those ended up on the Argos? Like they lost a bit of that depth. In the CFL today, you need to find starters that can play. That can play right away almost. Oh, his brother just got picked
Montreal.
by Montreal.
Mm-hmm.
So both the brothers
The
go in the
first
first
round.
round.
Yep, twin
Where
brothers.
very interesting. They were these. This is like looking at these two. It reminds me of the other brothers that were picked in the CFL draft. The Herdman.
Yep. Well, they
I
were a little confusing because they had two different last names, and
Yeah,
they were
Herdman
twin brothers.
Reed and Herdman. That made it a little difficult, but um, I think this is a great thing. Not only because these guys just scream, they just scream Canadiana in terms of this is what the CFL draft is all about, right?
Absolutely.
Um,
So another Calgary pick
the
by
Dinos
Montreal
are
this time.
Dinos
Um,
are a really good team when it comes to producing CFL talent. I don't think there is a better Canadian university than the University of Calgary.
St. Francis Xavier provided the sixth pick, which the Toronto Argonauts picked, Greg McKellar. We talked a little bit about him. He's an offensive lineman, 6'5", 311 pounds. Where's the beef? Apparently, in the Argo lineup now.
Yeah, I think the Argos have seen what they have gone up against in Hamilton, what they have seen Winnipeg done. You
They
can't.
lost some good offensive linemen over the season. The through free agency, and
Yeah,
they really do need to replenish that. And Canadian is a way to go if that's the best
yeah.
player in the position that that you need.
The Argos have. There's been a bit of a trend there in first round picks being offensive linemen for the Argos too. They've been very successful at that when it comes to drafting offensive linemen in the first round. It's worked pretty much worked in their favor, in my opinion. Um, I look at last, a guy like Nicastro, who was, who I think will be a perennial top Canadian player for the next few years. Shane Richards, uh, you know, finally decided to put things together a little bit, and he's going to be a starter now. Ryan Hunter was another first round Canadian offensive lineman. Sean Mckeon, I think, was by far the best one. It didn't work out. I mean, it worked out because he was here
For
for the
Calgary,
breakup,
it
and
worked out
then
for
he went
Calgary.
back home to Calgary. Yeah, there've been quite a few. The Argos are no strangers to take. Even Theron Churchill last year. The Argos not only are they adding offensive, they're adding nasty offensive linemen too. Like that's the sense that I've been getting with a lot of these guys is they're not just good big offensive linemen. They're tough as nails to play against.
So he was projected to go 12th. Instead, he went 6th to the Argos. The next pick is Samuel Emilius, and he is a wide receiver, 6'1", 200 pounds, from Louisiana Tech. He's one of the U.S. college picks. This is a guy who may never play in the Canadian Football League. Excuse me. Bless me.
Yeah, you're taking a chance on. We've noticed a lot of teams are taking the chance now. Like it's all depending on how you approach the CFL draft and what you think is the best route in terms of adding talent to your team. Maybe they needed to Saskatchewan needed to take him this early just to give him that thought process of wanting to come to the CFL one day.
And getting a great player. A guy spoken about a lot, Trey Ford, out of Waterloo, picked 8th by the Edmonton Elk.
Chris Jones is talking to TSN right now. I'm not sure what he's saying about it, but I'm sure they're talking about Trey Ford. And I'm wondering, we've seen CFL teams take quarterbacks, take their times and develop them. I wonder how much Trey Ford gets pushed. I think. Well, if now this is the thing, Trey Ford has a camp invite with Baltimore with the Ravens in the NFL, so that's going to be obviously his first priority to try to get himself in the NFL conversation. But if that doesn't work out and he comes to the CFL, I Edmonton might have found a nice little jewel there. And look, with 2 first round picks, you can afford to take a bit of a flyer, a risk on getting a quarterback if that's
Yeah.
the quarterback you think can.
And I think the other thing is the new quarterback rule where you can have two quarterbacks in the formation.
And he's someone
Means-
that the skill sets work for that idea.
yeah, and exactly, and so uh, if you're a Canadian quarterback, you can do what every Canadian quarterback it seems has been asked to do, and that is play another position. But you can actually play your position, but it's more of a subtle role as a quarterback, more of an introductory offer, but far better opportunity to show what you can do and your skill set in that situation rather than short gain you know job 3
Mhm.
4 times a game. You go out there and you go for the 1 yard first down. So this is a little better for Canadian quarterbacks. It's a way to get and the we've talked, you and I have talked, and I've been very vocal about the fact that the Canadian Football League is not as loaded with quarterbacks as it once was, and that doesn't mean there aren't good quarterbacks. It just means that they're not as flush with them, right? We for some reason, maybe it's the cap because quarterbacks are making a lot more money before the cap.
And how many of these backups are getting decent money too, right? And just to have them sitting on the bench. I wondered about that rule to include the two quarterbacks on the field. I think it's also to encourage teams to include quarterbacks that are more athletic, right?
Absolutely.
That can do, as you were mentioning, they can do
A little
different
more,
things.
a
Yeah.
little more than get a first down. And you know what? Maybe with that, there can be plays out there that are more than just running. Basically just running into the defensive line. Maybe there can be some. I don't want to call them trick plays, but plays you know that basically take advantage of an actual quarterback doing what quarterbacks do without any warning. That's the part that I like.
Yeah, no, and it's all about trying new things to try to reinvigorate a league that maybe that many believe have gone a bit stale. Something new and exciting. I'm very much looking forward to it.
So the second twin goes Tyson Philpot out of Calgary, wide receiver, 6'1", 185 pounds, drafted by the Montreal Alouettes. A good pick for them. On the clock right now are the Toronto Argonauts, and they're about to use the pick from Edmonton for Nick Arbuckle.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about the Philpot brothers, guess who plays each other in Week 1? Calgary and Montreal. The brothers
There
will
you go.
be.
And
That'll be
those are always interesting games. Montreal, even when they weren't playing well, about 5 years ago, they were still manhandling Calgary. Calgary had a hard time beating them. Is it getting easier? I don't know, but it's going to get more interesting with the two twins, and hopefully they'll both be in the lineup to some degree so that they can have some fun and meet before the game and remind each other what it's like to be on the football field with their brother. I like it.
cool.
I like the story.
Love the story. This is CFL needs more stories like this. Guys that embrace the Canadian Football League and want to make it they're doing a big draft party too. Like they're getting the TV time. Like it's a nice thing to see. It's something the CFL needs more of.
He dropped from third overall to number 9, the last pick in the first round.
He's got something to prove.
Yeah. Well, they always have something to prove. Question is, do they get a chance to do it year one? Um, a position such as receiver, it's very possible. Not that being a receiver is easier than any other position. The pressure is a little less because you're not the only quarterback. You're not on the offensive line where you need to learn some stuff. Um, you know, if you're a running back or you're physically built yet to play pro football, with a wide receiver, the skill set is so wide. Speed, agility, height, catch radius, all that wonderful stuff. if you can do a couple of those things right off the bat, you can be effective. We've seen a lot of rookie Canadian receivers do well, and it wouldn't surprise me if both these twins do very well in their first year.
They need it. The CFL teams need quality Canadian young athletes to make an impact because salary reasons, many reasons. But I think there hasn't been a better time to be a Canadian positional player outside of offensive linemen in the CFL right now. Because how many times have we said, it's usually offensive linemen, it's usually defensive linemen? Nah, we're seeing teams, the athletes have improved to the point where we're seeing quite a few more receivers getting taken in the first round. 3 in this first round. No, a third of your picks were receivers. If I'm looking here, third of the picks were receivers. You had 2 offensive linemen. You had one defensive lineman, a linebacker, a defensive back, and a quarterback. That's as diverse of a first round you're going to get, I think, in a long, long time. It shows that the other positions are starting to catch up in terms of the Canadian talent.
And the surprise is that a quarterback in the first round, but you can call it a surprise or not. That's so the first round yields basically an interesting set of circumstances. Montreal trading up, Edmonton trading down, picking up McConnell, who was drafted last year or the year before, and he looks to be developing. And so for them, that was a good pick. The Argonauts, the team that we cover, offensive line, we discussed that they need to replenish their Canadian offensive linemen. So real quick, Terrell Richards of Syracuse to Montreal, Zach Pelahos to Ottawa, Nathan Cherry of Saskatchewan to BC, Enoch McConzo, Coastal Carolinas, where he played with the Edmonton Elks now, Jalen Philpot, Calgary. We talked about Greg McKellar, St. Francis Xavier. And let's see here, Samuel Emilius, Louisiana Tech for Saskatchewan. Trey Ford, we talked about the quarterback with Edmonton. Edmonton's going to be making some moves, and I don't think they're done yet. Tyson Philpot rounded out the first round, the second half of the Twins, and it was an interesting first round. David, we had a chance to listen to all the coaches and general managers, and I think the most important thing that we are reminded is that there are communities that produce exceptional football players, and those communities have close by CFL teams. Montreal is a primary example of wanting to repatriate, if you will, the players from Quebec, and they have a general manager who has spent a lot of time with the Montreal Caravans, and he's spent a few years following, Canadian football, university football, and so he has a little bit of a book on a lot of players that forget about the draft alone, because he also has an idea of what players, if they become available, he'd like to bring back to Quebec.
Yeah, actually a little bit surprised that that's not where Montreal went with that pick. Right? They usually do like to go with the francophone talent. I also just think that in the CFL you have to kind of cater to these picks a little bit and try to find a way to excite them about playing in the CFL in some cases. In terms of, I don't mean that these players aren't excited about playing the CFL. I just think you need to incentivize them to want to come. Right? Some of them still believe.
Well,
that
they
can
do
go
get
to
paid. Most of the contracts that drafted players get are probably, for many of them, the best contract they'll get.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, it certainly is. And look, a lot of them come, like, if they don't have to think about finding a place to live because they're already from, like, let's say if they're from Montreal, if they're from Quebec, it makes it a little easier. They know what to expect. They're from that region. They can relate to it, right? Some of them may have there might be sentimental value. about wanting. There's some. I think there's something about playing for your hometown that gets
Well, it's
overlooked.
for me. It's simply economic. I mean, if these young men can play at home, they don't have to worry about will they be able to live in comfort based on their income or the amount of money that a CFL team will provide them for moving somewhere. I mean, you can be far more at home living at home than on the road. So, I don't think that can be underplayed. But I think also if you're a team and if you understand the Canadian part of the Canadian Football League, you need to have the very best lineup of Canadians on your team to give you the best chance to win because it still is extremely important. Even though the diversity of talent within the Canadian talent pool has changed, quarterbacks, you know, DBs, linemen, defensive linemen, we're seeing more of that. So, some players are good enough, to warrant the kind of attention that they're going to get over and above their local team, if you will.
Yeah,
They earn it.
no,
So
yeah, no, for sure. And I've always made it a point of saying that this whole debate that's been going on between American players and Canadian players and who's more valuable to the league, or how can we ensure that the Canadian still matters in the CFL. Look, I always say what makes the CFL special is that we get to highlight the incredible talent that we have here. And you know what's the point of calling it the CFL, the Canadian Football League, if we're going to make it a little easier for these American players, right? And not to say the American players don't deserve it. It's just that's what makes it. The Canadian, all the Canadian Football League fans have says, well, we want to protect the rules because that's what makes it that's unique. That's the unique thing about Canadian Football League. True,
so
but I also think it's the fact that you're giving players from your own backyard a chance to realize their dream of playing football while also being able to stay at home.
Deontay Knight, drafted by the Toronto Argonauts, the first pick in the second round, the pick that they received from Edmonton for Nick Arbuckle. This is the kind of pick that should excite Argo fans. This is a guy who can be a ratio buster, and that's something that, again, that's one of the temptations in picking guys that you're not sure will be in the Canadian Football League, because for sure that these guys are ratio busters, and you need to take a shot at them.
Euros have done a pretty good job of taking linemen as well. Like defensive line it's kind of a crucial part of the CFL because you need guys that can rush the quarterback. Obviously, picking somebody out of Western too, it's you're gonna get some. Actually, I'm just checking to see where he is. He's from Ajax, Ontario product here. So this is also a player that was invited. I just doing my read ups on some of these guys. He was actually invited to the Washington Commanders NFL rookie camp. Uh, so this was actually announced the other day. So he's been invited to like this is a player that's got some. He's got a bit of
Cachet.
yeah, he's right when these guys get noticed south of the border. And look, Western, we know Western's one of the premier teams in Ontario. So he plays for a good team. He's going to get a little bit more of that of a look there. But I believe actually it's Washington and Tampa Bay that have extended invites. So if it doesn't work out, if those camp invites don't work out, seems like the Argos might have a decent player in a very critical position in the trenches.
That is without a doubt. Anyway, they've done a good job, and it's going to be interesting. enjoy watching. This is Marshall Ferguson, who has moved on to doing play-by-play at some of the Argo games, as you know, when we were at. Now you've got a situation where his expertise and a former. Remember, he's a former quarterback, and didn't get a chance to ask him because we had other questions to ask him. I wanted to ask him about quarterbacks and how he feels Canadian quarterbacks stand a better chance of being CFL players, and I think they have. I mean, BC has committed to at least considering and having two high profile Canadian quarterbacks that they might be using. And we talk about quarterback tandems, David, but now you can talk about quarterback tandems on the field, not just on the sidelines.
Um, yeah, it's certainly it's certainly a position that you know I'm hoping that the new wave will kind of dispel some of the old thinking, you know, about the core, especially the quarterback position, right? We, I'm hoping that things do change for the better for this league because you know we've heard teams say that we need new quarterbacks. Well, where do you get new quarterbacks, Frank? You get it through the draft. I think you so much
Quarterback school.
so much time and effort goes into the draft. How do you not try? I think every team should consider taking a quarterback. It'd be nice. It's funny because they did the territorial picks for the longest time. So you would take a player, and he would. You can only take it from your own backyard. So the Argos did that with Sam Achapong a few years ago, and it worked really well for them because he's a really good player for them now. Why isn't there a round? You create a round where you draft quarterbacks. You don't. It's an extra pick you could add, and teams can take chances on quarterbacks and give them that opportunity. I don't know. I think there's more that could be done to give quarterbacks their uh, that could give them more opportunity up here.
There's a. What do you think of the Esks releasing Matavius Bryant?
Well, when they signed him, I was just like, I don't even think he's going to come. Right? There's something there. He's had issues in the NFL. We know that. I think it was a bit of fool's gold to expect him to take the CFL seriously. A guy who believes he should be in the NFL right now, but has ruined his opportunity in ways because of things he did off the field.
Hmm.
That there comes with a bit of I think a reality check for him, and whether he really is. And look, this is something I've always said with CFL, with NFL players coming to the CFL. Are you prepared to actually give the CFL a legitimate shake and not just come up here and hope that you're going to get released after a year? Because we saw that as well.
Yeah, there's always the issue that, um, you know, well, one of the big things is that one of the differences the NFL and the Canadian Football League is weed, marijuana. It's not against the rules in the Canadian Football League. It is in the NFL.
Yes.
So those are the kinds of things where you could get a decent player. I don't think that pot smokers are a major concern, um, unless you think that pot smoking does not make for good football players, which a very large majority of Canadian Football League players might disagree with you.
Yeah. No, and I just feel like this is what bothers me a little bit about how players view the CFL. And maybe this is why people have been very critical of the CFL in that you get a guy that like Martavis Bryant come up here, he plays here for a year, then he's gone. What did it serve the CFL to have him up here? It didn't really. In my opinion, it doesn't.
Liar.
Yeah, like can we not have players stick around for they don't have to play the rest of their careers here, but spend. This is why they were trying to do the minimum 2 years. But even 2 years is nothing when you really think
It's
about
true.
it.
No, it's true. There's no argument. It's definitely true. Um, but you know, let's be clear, David. You've got to try whatever you can. You know, like what today's all about is hope, right? Hope and uh, for players and also for teams that they hope they get lucky and get a player who maybe is even better than they thought when they picked them. Get a player who sticks around and maybe decides to come to the Canadian Football League, and decides to go about it with that in mind. You know, players like Singleton who played in the Canadian Football League, built a name for themselves, and went to the NFL. You know, and then there are the players who figure they go to the NFL right away, and then they figure out a way to stick. So you know, there's a lot of variables here that affect how a team drafts, and the success that every CFL team has drafting is affected by the uniqueness of the Canadian Football League draft and the uniqueness of opportunity that players have, you know, that play football. You know, it's a great opportunity for them that if they want to play the game and that's what they want to do, they can play in the Canadian Football League easier than they can in the NFL. If they have long-term goals of being, you know, one of the best football players in the world, you know, not that you can't be in the CFL, but in the NFL, it is without a doubt. If you are a key player in the NFL,
Mhm.
that you know, I mean, if a paycheck means anything, if that's if that's a way of determining the best football players by how much they earn, I know that's not something that everybody prescribes to, but you know, it could be an important factor in a player's mind.
Yeah, and look, what's the why do players consistently try to go to the NFL? If that's where the money's at, right? I'm of the opinion that we need to incentivize Canadians not only coming to the CFL but staying in the CFL. I want to see them want to create a long term future in the CFL, but let's be real here. The CFL doesn't make it easy on them either. We need how many of these players get pushed out in a few years because they want too much money or they cost too much money,
Yeah, you
right?
know, their value is something that is its highest at the draft. This is the highest their value will be, at least to the Canadian Football League.
Right.
A few will have better paydays, but this is the best payday. This draft to get players to be picked, drafted, and paid. This is the best earliest start for a player. The Red Blacks have picked Cyril Hogan Sandon, offensive lineman, 6'5", another big kid, 310 pounds out of Laval.
Big player. Two straight offensive linemen for the Red Blacks in this draft. I think
Are
there
they
might
trying to
be.
say something?
Hey, you just spent a good penny on Jeremiah Mazzola. You better be able to keep that guy upright.
And that's going to be, you know, I don't think there's anybody that understands it better than Burke.
Yeah, no, for sure, right? And you look at what the Argos and what the Ticats have done on the defensive line. You need someone that's going to be out. Like we know Ottawa's defense has never been really the problem for them. It's been their offense. And how do you get problem with
Offensive
Ottawa's
line.
off? Yeah, like they've had a hard time keeping the quarterback upright. They don't run the ball very well. So I had a feeling they were going to target the offensive line in this draft. I didn't think they were going to do two straight picks of the offensive line, but not a bad way to start. Really for Ottawa here in terms of understanding what your team needs are.
Yeah, and 2 picks earlier than he was projected by our local expert. Uh, so that's a great move for them. Offensive linemen, they're popular again, David. You know, it looked like they're like this year has been pretty good for offensive line. What's old, what's new is old again, or what's old is new again.
I think it just talks to how much better the athletes are, right? We're seeing an improvement in the offensive lineman because my issue too is their competition that they're going up against, right? Are they going up against the best competition to make them better? Because we've seen a lot of players come from the states, come and play in Canada, and they dominate, and that's partially because the offensive linemen haven't been going up against the the size and skill of these players that come down from the states. You have to have if you're going to put a Canadian in a very important position like offensive line, make sure that he's going up against the best on the other end, or he understands the challenge of going up against the best on the other end, which is also why certain teams don't push their offensive linemen to start right away. They need to get them accustomed to playing against a different type of competition than they've become used to in the CFL.
Another pick, BC has picked Noah Zier, another offensive lineman, and this is a big guy too, 6'7", 330. Great pick. I think this was a pick off the board.
Looks like it. And if we're talking about another team that needs an offensive line to make sure their offensive line is in good shape, BC is definitely that team. Um, it does, and Saskatchewan has been pretty good at developing offensive linemen
Very
too.
good.
He actually, so they're showing his combine video right now, but I don't know is there um, accepted an invitation to an NFL rookie camp from the New York Giants. So some are saying he was, I think, the third ranked offensive lineman by Three Down Nation. They believe he's the most pro ready blocker in the draft. So I think BC maybe off the board, but I think maybe they're trying to find guys with the size and ability to start right away.
Definitely, that they need to make improvement, and one best way to make improvement is get players who are ready to play. Um, yeah, this is one of those picks that could be a surprise, but only time will tell.
Yeah, this is the thing about the CFL draft, and you're not going to notice it. Some you're not going to notice right away. Others are going to take time. Like Shane Repchurch was the first overall pick a couple of years ago, and is just becoming a CFL starter,
Yeah, and a good one.
right? So this is 3 years, and now he's penciled in or penned in as a CFL starter after 3 years. It's a long time to wait for a player to get to the point where the pandemic didn't help either, but that's quite a bit of patience for a team to show for a pick like that.
And let's keep in mind as well, as much as there are wily old veterans that are around sprinkled in the Canadian Football League, the average amount of time that a player a football career is less than 10 years. So if you're spending 3 years getting ready for, you know, your peak is only a few years after that. So whether it be earning power or peak opportunity to be a star, yeah, it's a shorter lifespan sports wise. So yeah, it's important that the Canadian teams, I should say that, yeah, the Canadian teams, the Canadian Football League teams, what I'm referring to, that the Canadian players that they bring, they have to be they have to be they have to be beneficial earlier rather than later, which is a reason why a lot of them are on special teams, right? And they can make a contribution. It's not the contribution that they truly want to make. And we've seen players who have spent a career doing special team work, and they've done a great job, and they've been appreciated for the work that they do. But down deep, we know every player wants to be, you know, not a part of the ensemble. They want once in a while to sing lead, right?
Yeah, no, I believe so. We actually just got another pick right now.
Yep, there he
Terrell
is.
Ford. Another player I was very interested in seeing where he was going to go, and of course it's Winnipeg.
Of course.
Of course. So we got another brother. So the two brothers are now
Yep.
off the board. I actually know somebody who knows both the brothers. They both grew up in the Niagara Falls area, and the person I know is they were in the Niagara Falls area too. Very very happy about the. He's very happy about this. He was telling me he expected them both to go pretty early. Winnipeg does it. I like this pick for Winnipeg quite a bit actually. I just think that they're the they've proven that they know how to find talent in the CFL draft. There's no doubt about that.
Does Calgary go for another wide receiver? I'm
Um,
saying a DB.
I think they're going to go defense too, on the defensive side of the ball.
I think they'll go for a DB next. There's quite a few, and Calgary, they've had some player movement that might make it interesting to have a Canadian DB.
Yeah, this is
Wouldn't surprise me with somebody like Jaden Delkey.
yeah. I don't know where Calgary's such an interesting team because they're not ready to go full. I would say rebuild because you don't really rebuild in the CFL, but I'm very curious to see where what side of the ball really gets their really gets the focus and the attention.
Yeah. Well, we're going to find out. What are some of the other
Okay.
things you heard from coaches and GMs in the meetings that
Well, one thing actually we didn't talk about, Mark Trestman. We've been meaning to talk about his comments about the rules and keeping three downs and all
you
those
think
things.
maybe he's just trying to keep his legend alive? You know, I mean, this is the game that made him famous. This is the game that has given him the most hardware he's seen in his life. He didn't see much hardware when he went to the NFL. He came here, he coached in Montreal, was a giant success there, a giant success in Toronto twice. Um, you know, this is a league that matters to him, and stats and history. He's an important part of it. So yeah, damn right he cares about the way the rules are.
Yeah, and I also just wonder he's taking a bit of flack too because a lot of the coaches in the CFL right now are they've come from his coaching umbrella. His paw prints are so all over the CFL in many ways,
And do
right?
you think that it's basically, well, why do you see him so concerned about it? He's left the league. He doesn't really have a profile here. The only profile he has is when he helicopters in, or he, you know, mentions it uh, out of the NFL, on the perimeter. Like
I'm also
what do you think is the reason why he feels so impassioned
inclined.
to make his view known? Like,
Yeah, and this is the interesting part here, right? Is how many guys, like the thing is about Mark Trestman is he trying to get back into the CFL in some way? Is he just trying to? Is it just? I think purely he's got such an admiration for the game and for the league because of what it's provided him, right? Um, but yeah, the timing of it was quite interesting, and I don't know what really sparked it from. It'd be nice to get a chance to talk to him. I know he's done some interviews um, lately. I It's just weird because Mark Trestman never really, he's never struck me as a passionate guy in a way.
That is the strangest thing.
I mean, he's a law professor now, right? He's not
Yeah,
exactly. He's not even in football,
emotion's not something that well, we've seen tons of emotion from him, but it's like everything else, right? It's relative. you know, when we talk about Mark Dressman being very emotional, it's well, God darn it, like that's there is he's not one of those guys who's extremely loud. He's pretty quiet. Mind you, though, he does have a reputation for making phone calls.
yeah, and a lot of guys look up to him, right? He's really got a what's the best way of putting it? His influence spreads quite a bit, not just through coaches, but through players, future coaches. Like, we might see Ricky Ray one day become a coach in the CFL if he really wants to get back into the league.
Probably through Edmonton.
Right? But this is a guy who had a lot of admiration for Mark Dressman because of what he provided for his career. And he resurrected his career in a way because we weren't sure how he was going to be after the very, very tough years of injuries.
So Josiah Shackle out of Alberta,
Defense.
defensive back. Exactly what I said. Not the guy I picked, but
It's funny because the TSN has him as a linebacker. But I guess in the CFL, here's the thing about the CFL: a guy might be a defensive back, but he most likely lines up more so as a linebacker. So, and from what I'm seeing from the film here, he seems to do a lot more running forward than running backwards.
well,
So, very interesting pick here by Calgary, though. I think they've they've been trying to retool the identity of that team from the 2018 Grey Cup win.
yeah, and that they, I think with Boldy by Mitchell healthy, I think they're back in. If he's healthy, they're back in the hunt for first. I truly believe that. And they haven't offered much resistance to Winnipeg, and Winnipeg hasn't had much resistance from Calgary. I'm looking forward to a better Calgary team making things interesting in the West because that'll be you know when you look at Chris Jones and what he's capable of doing on the short term, not guaranteed. When I say short term, within 2 years, he's done turnarounds for teams. Did it in Saskatchewan, did it in Edmonton. He's more than capable. And then you end up having Winnipeg already, Saskatchewan on the move. Throw Calgary in there, and that's going to be a dogfight for first.
Oh, it always feels like that, right? I can't legitimately think right now of who will be my pick to win that division.
It's hard not to say Winnipeg until they're beat, right?
Yeah, no, I totally agree that right now you always have to like that would be my tiebreaker, right? Winnipeg because of the defending champs. I also just think that maybe in the playoffs they were brought down a little bit too. They were such a good team throughout the regular season, but I think other teams figured out
Well, I'm
what
going to tell you the dark horse for me is Calgary. A healthy Bo
interesting.
Levi Mitchell and Calgary becomes a contender again in the Western Division.
Saskatchewan fans might not like what I'm about to say, but I think that's a team that's going to take a step back.
Well, hopefully, they remain very competitive. I have friends in
Yeah, I think they'll be
Saskatchewan. I
competitive. I don't think they're
wish
going to
them the
be.
best. I don't. I'm not sure. Well, it isn't really. It isn't really the time. In all honesty, to make a decision like that. I agree with you. For now, I don't think we're in a situation where the need to discuss who will win the Grey Cup. I think what we can discuss, and I think we're well within our rights to discuss, is how this draft affects, the Canadian contingent in the Canadian Football League and on their teams. And we've seen a pretty interesting draft and how these guys shake out at training camp. until training camp comes and we start seeing who the players are that the teams keep, and until we see some exhibition games, that growing feeling of that we get in the Canadian Football League when teams, with a lot of promise, like for example, I'll just give you a small example. We don't have much time, have very literally none. The Ottawa Red Blacks are for me the most interesting team going into the season.
Yeah, no, I think so too. I think the team that, I mean, mainly because they did so much.
Absolutely. I just want to see how much of what they did actually pans out.
Ooh, we got a running back taken. Interesting. The Argos just took a running back. I am not going to attempt to say this name.
I shut down the windows, so
Running back out of Bryant University,
I tell you what.
Daniel Ed. Oh, I'm not going to even try. Nope, not even going to
I'm
try.
going in there. I'm looking. I'm going to give it a shot. Let's see. Here we go. Toronto Argonauts. Where is it? Oh, Adebaboye. Adebaboye.
Adibaboye.
Adebaboye. How's that sound? Will that
It's a
pass?
lot better than what I was thinking. So I'll give you that.
Adebaboye. There you go. We're gonna have to say that name, David. Bryant University.
I'm gonna have to get in touch with the Argos PR team and get a proper pronunciation of that or some sort of nickname because.
There you go.
But
Bobby.
somebody, you know what? I think so. Didn't somebody ask Mike Clemens about picking a running back in the draft?
Well, he did it, and it's going to be a guy who can learn a lot from the guy they have there right now.
Exactly.
Right. Well, David, I think we've run out of time, buddy.
All right. I appreciate this is an easy one. We had so much more we could talk about, so it's very interesting.
Well, thanks, David. For David Morassutti, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching CFL Talk Aaron Live Mondays at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Today, Tuesday, because the Leafs played last night, and David didn't want to do it on Monday night. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network for CFL Talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer. Please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody.